The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Coalition was a marvel of engineering, a cavernous expanse suspended in zero gravity at the heart of the Tyrex's nebula. Delegates from hundreds of worlds floated in clusters, their bioluminescent robes casting soft glows of blue, gold, and green across the chamber. A chorus of murmurs, clicks, and hums echoed as species from every corner of the galaxy whispered about the newcomers. For the first time in recorded history, humanity, classified as a Deathworlder species, was about to speak before the galaxy's most powerful body. When the humans entered, the room fell silent. The delegation moved with quiet confidence. 5 individuals, clad in simple yet elegant formal wear, represented the collective will of Earth. At their head was Ambassador Elise Marlowe, her sharp gaze scanning the assembly like a hawk sizing up its prey. Behind her walked Dr. Vikram Desai, a renowned biologist, Colonel Isaac Trent, a stoic military advisor, and 2 aides who carried themselves with the precision of seasoned diplomats. Their footsteps were eerily silent on the hall's energy bridge, and the sheer focus of their approach sent ripples of unease through the alien crowd. Deathworlders were rare in the galaxy, products of planets deemed too dangerous, chaotic, or lethal to sustain advanced civilizations. Most Deathworld species burned out before they even reached the stars. That humanity had not only survived, but thrived was a matter of endless fascination and faint horror among the galactic elite. Ambassador Marlowe stopped at the center podium, a platform illuminated by a sphere of pale light. She waited, letting the tension build, before speaking in a voice that carried across the chamber with clarity and authority. Honorable members of the Galactic Coalition, she began, her tone measured but unyielding. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for inviting us to this assembly. It is a privilege to stand among so many civilizations united in the pursuit of peace and progress. The murmurs resumed, though quieter now. Humanity's reputation preceded them, and the rumors were wild. Some claimed they could survive injuries that would kill most species. Others whispered of their relentless creativity, their capacity to turn barren wastelands into thriving colonies. And then there were the darker stories, their wars, their weapons, their capacity for destruction when cornered. Marlowe continued, unfazed by the scrutiny. We come not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equals. Our world has endured hardships beyond imagination, environmental extremes, resource scarcity, and a history of conflict that has shaped us into what you see before you. We are survivors, builders, innovators. And while we are grateful for this opportunity to join the greater galactic community, we must address a matter of pressing importance. A ripple of anticipation moved through the assembly. Everyone knew what was coming. A towering figure rose from a dais near the center of the chamber. High Commander Xyler, a reptilian Carthian, leaned forward, his emerald scales catching the light. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed with authority. Ambassador Marlowe, the Coalition has reviewed humanity's capabilities. Your adaptability, resilience, and ingenuity are unparalleled. You possess the qualities of a perfect soldier, precisely what the galactic military requires. Surely, your species understands the honor of being entrusted with the defense of galactic peace. Marlowe's expression didn't waver, but a flicker of steel entered her gaze. High Commander, we are deeply honored by your assessment of our abilities. However, humanity cannot and will not accept conscription into the galactic military. The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped in confusion and outrage. Some delegates hissed or growled, their displays of aggression alien yet unmistakable. A few, more curious than indignant, simply stared. High Commander Xyler raised a clawed hand, silencing the room. Explain yourself, Ambassador, he said, his tone dangerously calm. The Coalition's military is not merely a force of war, it is a guardian of peace, a shield against chaos. Why would humanity refuse such a noble calling? Marlowe met his gaze without flinching. Because we have learned, through centuries of hard-earned experience, that peace cannot be maintained through coercion and conquest. Your military is vast, your power undeniable, but your methods, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Your methods are not aligned with our principles. Humanity has no interest in becoming a weapon wielded by others. Xyler's eyes narrowed. You believe yourselves above the duty of protecting the galaxy? No, Marlowe replied evenly. We believe that true protection begins with understanding, diplomacy, and the strength to defend one's own. If peace requires sacrificing our autonomy, it is a peace we cannot accept." The silence that followed was deafening. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, from the far side of the chamber, an Ilari diplomat, small and bird-like, let out a low trill of approval. Others, though still skeptical, seemed intrigued. Xyler, however, was unmoved. "This defiance," he said, his voice sharp, "will not go unanswered. Consider your position carefully, Ambassador. The Coalition does not take rejection lightly." Marlowe smiled, a faint, dangerous curve of her lips. "Nor do humans." The chamber erupted again as Marlowe stepped back from the podium. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Coalition had encountered a species that refused to bow. And humanity had just made its opening move. The air in the human delegation's quarters was tense. The soft hum of the Coalition ship's life support systems contrasted sharply with the sharp debate unfolding around the central holotable. "This isn't going to end with a polite disagreement," Colonel Isaac Trent said, his gravelly voice cutting through the din. The veteran military advisor stood with his arms crossed, his broad frame projecting an aura of controlled strength. "They're already framing us as defiant. Refusing their offer will paint a target on Earth." Ambassador Elise Marlowe leaned forward, hands resting on the edge of the table. Her sharp green eyes were unyielding. "We didn't come here to bow to threats, Colonel. They wanted us because they see us as tools, efficient, expendable, and easily controlled. Accepting their terms would mean sacrificing the very values that brought us to the stars." Dr. Vikram Desai, a lanky figure with a perpetually thoughtful expression, adjusted his glasses. "The term Deathworlder is more than a classification," he said, gesturing to the holographic projection of Earth. The spinning blue-green sphere was dwarfed by the Coalition insignia floating above it. To them, it's a label for something dangerous, unpredictable. They don't understand what shaped us, and they're afraid of what we represent. "What we represent," Trent countered, his voice edged with frustration, "is a potential threat to their status quo. They'll either try to force us into compliance or make an example of us." Marlowe straightened, her tone calm but resolute. "If they push, we push back. But first, we make them understand why humanity is different. 2 centuries earlier, humanity had taken its first steps into space under the shadow of desperation. Earth was a planet that demanded constant vigilance. Its tectonic fury shook cities to rubble, its volatile climate bred hurricanes, droughts, and floods with equal ferocity. Predators and pathogens had culled the weak, leaving behind a species forged in the crucible of adversity. Humanity's first encounter with an alien species had occurred in the outer solar system. The Arath, a soft-bodied race from a temperate water world, had been conducting an exploratory mission when their ship malfunctioned near Neptune. Earth space agencies had scrambled to respond. The event, later called the Neptune Accord, marked humanity's cautious introduction to the galaxy. The Arath had been bewildered by Earth's history. "You warred among yourselves for centuries," one had said during an early exchange, their voice translated into a soothing hum. "Your world should have destroyed you. And yet you thrive." The truth was simple: survival on Earth had been a constant battle. Humanity didn't evolve in a forgiving paradise, but on a world that demanded ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience. Wars had sharpened their strategic minds, while natural disasters had taught them to rebuild better and faster. Every setback had been a lesson, every disaster a crucible. In the present, Marlowe gestured to the holographic display, now cycling through images of Earth's diverse environments: the dense Amazon rainforest, the scorching Sahara Desert, the icebound tundras of Antarctica. "They think resilience is something you're born with," she said, her voice laced with quiet intensity. "But we know better. It's earned. Built. Every hardship we've faced has taught us to survive, to innovate, to grow stronger." Dr. Desai added, "And that's what frightens them. They see a species that doesn't just endure but adapts and thrives. We don't fit into their neat little boxes. We're the variable they can't control." One of the aides, a young woman named Rebecca Kane, hesitated before speaking. "Ambassador, what if they don't care about understanding us? What if their only goal is to break us?" Marlowe's gaze softened as she looked at the younger woman. If that's their goal, they'll learn the hardest lesson of all: breaking humanity only forges us into something stronger. Later that evening, Marlowe stood alone by the viewport of their quarters, staring out at the starfield beyond. The Coalition ship was a marvel of engineering, its size and elegance a testament to millennia of cooperative progress. And yet, for all their advancements, the Coalition had a blind spot. They saw humanity's history as a weakness, a legacy of chaos and violence, something to be tamed or exploited. What they didn't see was the strength forged in those very struggles. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Colonel Trent entered the room, his usual stoicism tempered by a rare moment of candor. "You really think they'll back down?" "They might," Marlowe said, turning to face him. "But if they don't, we'll show them that the peace they've built on the backs of the vulnerable won't stand against a species that values its freedom above all else." Trent nodded. "Then we'd better be ready." As the stars outside continued their silent dance, humanity's resolve solidified. They hadn't survived Earth's crucible just to kneel before another master. Whatever the Coalition thought, humanity's harsh lessons had prepared them for what was to come. The shadows of the Galactic Coalition's polished veneer began to unravel the moment the human delegation gained access to restricted archives. What they found wasn't shocking, it was horrifying. Ambassador Elise Marlowe leaned over the holographic display in their secured quarters, her face set in a grim mask. The room's soft lighting reflected off the scrolling documents projected before her, a torrent of classified reports, military requisitions, and casualty lists. Dr. Vikram Desai and Colonel Isaac Trent flanked her, their silence more telling than any words. "This isn't peacekeeping," Marlowe said, her voice sharp. "This is systemic exploitation." The Coalition's military, which presented itself as a noble force maintaining order in the galaxy, was anything but. The reports painted a damning picture: entire species from low-tech worlds conscripted en masse, their planets stripped of resources to fuel endless skirmishes along the Coalition's borders. Deathworlder species, like humanity, were particularly prized, deployed as frontline shock troops in conflicts orchestrated more to consolidate power than to protect. Desai scrolled to a specific entry, a detailed breakdown of a recent campaign. His normally calm demeanor cracked as he read aloud. The Jalurans, amphibian species from a Category 3 world. Drafted into the military to earn their place in the Coalition. 90% casualty rate in the first 2 years of deployment. Their population collapsed within a decade. Trent exhaled sharply, pacing the room. "This is why they want us. We're disposable to them, just another asset in their war machine. They dangle membership and resources as bait, but the cost is our autonomy. Our lives." Marlowe's jaw tightened. She turned to Rebecca Kane, the younger aide who had uncovered the files through a sympathetic Coalition informant. "Who gave you this?" Rebecca hesitated. "A Zalirian diplomat. She didn't give her name, but she said she's been trying to expose this for years. The Coalition system is rotten, Ambassador. If we speak out, she thinks others will join us." Trent's bark of laughter was bitter. "If they're not silenced first. You've seen how the Coalition handles dissent. Planets that refuse the draft end up economically isolated, or worse." Marlowe's mind raced. The discovery of these documents changed everything. It wasn't just about rejecting the Coalition's military offer anymore, it was about exposing a system built on oppression and lies. The problem was how to do it without painting a target on Earth. The following day, Marlowe requested a private meeting with High Commander Zyler aboard the Coalition flagship. The chamber where they convened was stark and sterile, designed for intimidation rather than comfort. Zyler sat across from her, his reptilian eyes narrowing as she placed a data slate on the table between them. "What is this, Ambassador?" Zyler asked, his voice cold. "A question," Marlowe replied, her tone deceptively mild. "How do you justify the forced conscription of entire species? The Jalurans, the Corellians, the Draxi, they didn't volunteer for your so-called peacekeeping efforts. You conscripted them. You used them. And now, their civilizations are either extinct or on the brink of collapse." Zyler's eyes flared briefly, his scales rippling with agitation. "You overstep, human. These measures are necessary to maintain order. The galaxy is not a safe place, and sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Marlowe leaned forward, her voice cutting like steel. Sacrifices you conveniently avoid making yourself. How many Carthians have served on your front lines, Commander? How many of your people have been sent to die on border worlds while you sit in your seat of power? Xyler's claws dug into the table, but he didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. You call this peace, but it's built on the blood of the defenseless, Marlowe continued. And now, you want humanity to join your slaughterhouse. Let me be clear, we won't be your pawns. We won't fight your wars. And we will not remain silent about what we've seen. Xyler rose from his seat, his towering form casting a shadow over the table. Be careful, Ambassador. The Coalition is not as forgiving as your naive sense of morality might hope. Marlowe didn't flinch. Neither are we. Back in their quarters, the team reviewed their next steps. The human delegation's decision to expose the Coalition's practices wasn't without risk, but it was a risk they had to take. We leaked the documents, Marlowe said, her tone resolute. Carefully, strategically. We need to ensure the galaxy sees the truth, and that humanity isn't acting alone. If we can rally other disillusioned species, we might force the Coalition's hand. Trent nodded. And if they retaliate? Marlowe's gaze hardened. Then we show them why humanity survived the Death World. If they think we'll roll over, they haven't been paying attention. As the stars outside shimmered in the void, humanity's path became clear. They would not kneel. They would not submit. And they would not let the Coalition's dark secrets remain buried. In that moment, the galaxy's most dangerous species decided to fight, not with weapons, but with the truth. It was a battle they were uniquely suited to win. The Coalition fleet loomed in Earth's orbit, an unspoken declaration of war. Dozens of ships, each a marvel of galactic engineering, glittered against the backdrop of the stars. Their arrival was meant to intimidate, to remind humanity of its place in the grand galactic order. Instead, it became the stage for humanity's defiance. Ambassador Elise Marlowe stood in the control room of the Terran Defense Command Center, an underground fortress carved into the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Around her, holographic displays flickered with real-time data. Earth's orbital defenses were on high alert, their targeting systems locked on the Coalition ships. Across the planet, humanity held its collective breath. They brought an entire fleet, Colonel Isaac Trent muttered, his arms crossed as he stared at the tactical display. His voice carried a mix of tension and anticipation. Arrogant bastards think they've already won. Marlowe glanced at him, her expression calm but determined. They've underestimated us. It's time we show them what that mistake will cost. Humanity's preparations had begun the moment they realized the Coalition's true intentions. Earth's scientists, engineers, and military leaders had worked tirelessly, combining centuries of innovation with the technological insights gleaned from their brief but transformative contact with the galactic community. The result was a defense network unlike anything the Coalition had faced before. At the center of it all was Aegis, Earth's crown jewel, an advanced AI-driven defense system capable of coordinating thousands of autonomous drones, orbital platforms, and ground-based installations. Unlike the Coalition's rigid, hierarchical systems, Aegis adapted in real time, analyzing threats and devising countermeasures with terrifying speed. Dr. Vikram Desai, standing at one of the consoles, was a key architect of Aegis. He watched as the system's interface came to life, its algorithms mapping the Coalition fleet's formation. They think in straight lines, he said, shaking his head. Their tactics are predictable, designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers and firepower. They've never faced an enemy that can outthink them. Trent grinned, his usual grim demeanor momentarily lifting. Good. Let's teach them how a Deathworlder thinks. The Coalition's opening move was as predictable as it was overwhelming. A delegation broadcasted a demand, immediate compliance or Earth would face neutralization. The message, delivered by High Commander Xyler himself, was curt and final. Marlowe responded with equal clarity. The Terran Defense Command transmitted a message to the fleet, a simple declaration backed by an implicit warning: humanity does not bow. Withdraw, or face the consequences. Moments later, the first wave of the Coalition fleet moved into position. It was a calculated show of force, frigates and cruisers forming a blockade while their larger capital ships prepared to unleash their arsenal. But as they approached Earth's upper atmosphere, the Aegis system sprang into action. Across the planet, hidden launch silos opened, and swarms of autonomous drones erupted into the sky. Sleek and fast, they moved with precision, evading the Coalition's initial barrage with almost organic fluidity. Orbiting defense platforms fired electromagnetic pulses, disrupting the Coalition fleet's targeting systems. On the ground, kinetic railguns roared to life, their projectiles streaking toward the heavens at hypersonic speeds. The Coalition's fleet faltered. Their ships, designed for long campaigns against poorly equipped border worlds, were unprepared for Earth's layered defenses. The humans weren't fighting a conventional war, they were fighting on their own terms, leveraging every advantage their ingenuity and environment provided. From the command center, Trent watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. They didn't see this coming. They didn't want to, Marlowe replied. They assumed we'd fall in line, just like every other species they've bullied. They were wrong. As the battle raged, Earth transmitted live footage of the conflict across the galactic network. For the first time, species across the Coalition saw the truth. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was thriving in the face of overwhelming odds. The broadcasts included a damning exposé of the Coalition's exploitative practices, leaked documents that detailed the atrocities committed in the name of peace. The galaxy began to stir. Messages of support trickled in from fringe species and minor worlds, many of whom had long resented the Coalition's dominance. Others, still cautious, watched in silence, waiting to see if humanity's defiance would spark a broader movement. As the Coalition fleet struggled to regroup, Marlowe delivered a final message to Xyler. Her image appeared on the flagship's main display, her voice calm but edged with steel. This is your only warning, High Commander. Humanity will not be subjugated. Withdraw your fleet, or we will dismantle it. Xyler sneered, his pride refusing to yield. You think your tricks will save you, Deathworlder? We will grind your planet to dust. Marlowe's lips curved into a faint smile. You assume we've shown you everything. At her signal, Aegis activated its final measure, an experimental electromagnetic disruptor capable of temporarily disabling all unshielded systems within a 100,000-kilometer radius. In an instant, the Coalition fleet ships went dark, their engines and weapons rendered useless. The Terran Defense Command let the moment hang, a silent reminder of humanity's capability. Back in the command center, Marlowe watched as the Coalition fleet began to retreat. For now, the message had been delivered. Earth would not kneel. This isn't over, Trent said, his voice heavy with the weight of reality. No, Marlowe agreed, her gaze fixed on the stars. But the galaxy knows who we are now. That's the first step. And with that, humanity turned its attention to the battles still to come. The Coalition wasn't just an adversary, it was an institution, a system that needed to be dismantled. Earth had drawn its line in the sand, and the fight for freedom had only just begun. The Grand Assembly Hall was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting across the galaxy. Delegates from hundreds of species gathered in tense clusters, their bioluminescent robes dimmed in a gesture of unease. The footage of Earth's defiance had spread faster than the Coalition's sensors could contain it, sparking debates, protests, and even uprisings across multiple star systems. Humanity had not just stood against the Coalition, they had exposed its dark truths for all to see. Now, Ambassador Elise Marlowe stood once again at the center podium, her presence commanding attention. The silence in the hall was oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of the holographic display she had brought with her. Behind her, Colonel Isaac Trent stood like a sentinel, his eyes scanning the assembly for any sign of hostility. Dr. Vikram Desai and Rebecca Kane flanked Marlowe, their expressions resolute. Members of the Galactic Coalition, Marlowe began, her voice calm yet firm, I stand before you not to ask for forgiveness, but to demand accountability. The holographic display flickered to life, projecting damning evidence of the Coalition's exploitation, documents detailing forced conscription, records of planetary resource extraction, and casualty lists from campaigns waged under the guise of peacekeeping. Gasps rippled through the assembly as the delegates absorbed the sheer scale of the revelations. For centuries, Marlowe continued, you have maintained this so-called peace by sacrificing the vulnerable. You've built a system that thrives on coercion and fear, all while presenting yourselves as benevolent protectors. But now, the galaxy knows the truth. A Corellian delegate, her crystalline form shimmering with anger, stood abruptly. Are we to believe these accusations without question? What proof do you offer beyond these stolen files? Marlowe nodded, unfazed by the challenge. The proof is undeniable and corroborated by those who have suffered under your rule. She gestured to the side, and the hologram shifted to display a live feed from multiple planets. Representatives of oppressed species, Jalurans, Draxi, and others, appeared, their faces resolute. One by one, they spoke. A Jaluran elder described how his people had been conscripted until their population dwindled to near extinction. A Draxi rebel recounted the destruction of her homeworld after they resisted the Coalition's demands for tribute. Their testimonies were raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. The assembly erupted into chaos. Some delegates demanded immediate reforms, while others doubled down, accusing humanity of sowing discord. High Commander Xyler, seated at the central dais, rose to address the room. His voice carried an edge of barely restrained fury. This is nothing but propaganda from a species that refuses to understand the necessity of sacrifice, he said, his emerald scales glinting under the chamber's lights. The galaxy is dangerous. Without the Coalition's strength, chaos will consume us all. Marlowe's gaze sharpened. The Coalition's strength? Or your power? You speak of necessity, Commander, but what you fear is losing control. Humanity knows what it means to survive chaos. Our history is a testament to that. And we know that true strength doesn't come from subjugation. It comes from unity, built on trust and mutual respect. The room quieted as Marlowe stepped forward, her voice rising with conviction. The Coalition must change. Reform is no longer an option, it's an imperative. If you continue on this path, you will not maintain peace, you will ignite rebellion. Earth has already shown you that a Deathworlder species will not kneel. How many more will rise when they see what's possible? The tension in the hall was palpable as Xyler stared at Marlowe, his jaw tightening. And what would you have us do, Ambassador? Tear down centuries of order to satisfy your moral grandstanding? No, Marlowe said, her tone steady. But you must tear down the structures of oppression you've built. Disband the forced conscription programs. Establish real representation for all member species. And most importantly, dismantle the galactic military as it exists today. Let it be a force of defense, not domination. Xyler's laugh was bitter. Idealism won't save the galaxy, human. Maybe not, Marlowe replied, a faint smile curving her lips. But it's a better foundation than fear. Hours later, after heated debates and private negotiations, the Assembly reached a tentative agreement. A reform council was established, tasked with dismantling the most exploitative practices of the Coalition. It was a small victory, but a significant one, proof that even the most entrenched systems could be challenged. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Trent approached Marlowe. You think they'll actually follow through? They don't have a choice, she replied. We've exposed them. If they try to go back to the old ways, the galaxy will rise against them. And us? Desai asked. What happens now? Marlowe looked out at the stars beyond the viewport, her expression thoughtful. Now, we prepare. The Coalition may change, but it won't forget. They'll watch us, test us. But we've shown them what humanity stands for and what we're capable of. That's the beginning of real peace. As Earth's delegation departed the Assembly, humanity's message echoed across the galaxy. The era of silent submission was over. A new chapter had begun, one where strength was defined not by conquest, but by the courage to fight for a better future.